1 year ago today, Virginia Giuffre took her own life. She was 41 years old, a mother of 3, and she was the single woman on this planet who did more damage to Jeffrey Epstein's empire than the FBI, the DOJ, and every journalist combined. In the 365 days since she died, almost every single warning she gave us has started coming true. The names, the protection, the cover-up, the arrests. Today, on the anniversary of her death, I'm going to walk you through exactly what Virginia told the world before she was silenced, and what's been confirmed in writing in just the last 12 months. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear, no mainstream news anchor in America will say to you in one sitting.
Virginia Giuffre wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She wasn't political. She was a teenager working at the spa at Mar-a-Lago when Ghislaine Maxwell walked up to her and asked if she wanted to learn how to be a professional masseuse. She was 16 years old. What happened to her over the next 2 years would eventually blow the doors off the most protected secret in American politics. But here's what made Virginia different from every other survivor. She got out. She moved to Australia. She had a family. She built a life. And then, instead of staying quiet, instead of taking the money and disappearing, she did the most dangerous thing a survivor can do. She named names. Out loud, on camera, under oath, in court. She said Prince Andrew abused her 3 times, starting when she was 17. He laughed it off. He gave that disastrous BBC interview where he claimed he physically couldn't sweat. He lost his royal title. And in 2022, he paid her a settlement reportedly worth millions. She said other powerful men were involved. She said there was a client list. She said the FBI had ignored what they were told. She said billionaires were paying for silence. For 15 years, the establishment laughed at her. Lawyers called her unreliable. Reporters called her a gold digger. Powerful men called her a liar. Then, the documents came out, and every single one of her warnings turned out to be true.
In November 2025, President Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law. The bill required the DOJ to release everything they had: flight logs, emails, photos, witness interviews. No redactions allowed, except to protect victims. The first batch came out in late 2025. Tiny, heavily redacted, useless. Then, on January 30th, 2026, the dam broke. The Department of Justice dumped 3.5 million pages, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. And suddenly, what Virginia had been screaming about for over a decade started showing up in black and white. Let me give you the receipts. She said Prince Andrew was a predator. April 2026, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, has been arrested. His royal title was stripped last year. He's facing UK criminal proceedings. She said politicians were protected by the network. April 2026, Peter Mandelson, the UK politician who Britain sent to Washington as their American ambassador, was arrested over his Epstein ties. The British Prime Minister is facing pressure to resign for appointing him. She said this was international. February 2026, former Norwegian Prime Minister Thorbjorn Jagland was charged with aggravated corruption tied to Epstein. She said the Justice Department itself was compromised. April 2nd, 2026, President Trump fired Attorney General Pam Bondi after she botched the file release. 3 weeks later, Bondi refused to even show up for her own deposition. The DOJ now says she will not testify before Congress. She said billionaires were paying for silence. February 2026, Bill Gates publicly admitted to 2 extramarital affairs after Epstein's emails surfaced. The Gates Foundation has now hired an outside investigator to dig into its own Epstein connections. Even Sarah Ferguson,
The ex-wife of Prince Andrew, who publicly condemned Epstein, was caught in private emails calling him her supreme friend, who Charity shut down.
The names you've heard so far, Andrew, Mandelson, Gates, Bondi, those are just the names the DOJ couldn't hide anymore. On April 22, 2026, something quietly changed. Multiple Epstein victims came forward to CNN reporters and said something explosive. They said other men abused them. Men whose names are not in the released files. Men who were never investigated. Men who are still walking free today. Read that again. Victims are now telling the press there are abusers, by name, that the FBI was told about and the DOJ never followed up on, and whose names were not in the 3.5 million pages. Virginia said this in interviews, in depositions, in her memoir. She said in her own words that powerful people will go to extraordinary lengths to protect their friends. She wasn't being dramatic. She was describing the system. And on April 23, 2026, 3 days before her family held a vigil in her memory, the DOJ Inspector General announced a formal investigation into how the Epstein files were handled. Why? Because the redactions were a disaster. 43 real victims had their full names left unredacted in the public files. Some names appeared over 100 times. Home addresses were searchable. Phone numbers were visible. The men accused of abusing them, their faces were blurred, their names blacked out. Even in copies of the same document, women's names were exposed in one version and protected in another. Men's identities were always protected. The lawyers representing over 200 survivors filed an emergency motion in February, calling this the worst single-day violation of victim privacy in U.S. history. This is exactly what Virginia warned us about. The system protects the powerful and exposes the survivors. On April 26, 2026, just 2 days ago as I'm filming this, Virginia's family and friends held a public vigil to mark the 1-year anniversary of her death. It wasn't political. It wasn't loud. It was candles, photos, and other Epstein survivors who say openly that they only had the courage to come forward because Virginia did it first. Her family spoke, her friends spoke. Survivors who would have stayed silent forever, they spoke. The message was simple. She didn't die for nothing. The 3.5 million pages, those exist because of her lawsuit. The Transparency Act, it passed because she refused to be quiet. Andrew's arrest, that happened because she sat in front of a camera at age 20 and told her story when no one wanted to hear it. Every single survivor speaking out today is standing on her shoulders.
So, where does this go from here? Todd Blanche is now acting Attorney General. He's openly auditioning for the permanent job. He told CNN there is, quote, no remaining thirst for these documents. Tell that to Virginia's mother. The House Oversight Committee is still fighting to force Bondi to testify. 5 Republicans broke ranks with their party to subpoena her. She's now refusing to appear at all. The DOJ is backing her refusal. The Gates Foundation is investigating itself. Sarah Ferguson's charity is folded. Peter Attia, a longevity doctor mentioned 1,700 times in the files, just resigned from CBS News. Yale has stripped a tenured professor of his teaching duties. UC San Diego cut ties with Deepak Chopra. This is the dam breaking. 1 year after Virginia's death. I'll leave you with this. Virginia Giuffre was 16 years old when they took her. She was 41 when she died. She spent 25 years telling the truth, and the most powerful institutions in the world called her a liar. Now we have the arrests. We have the resignations. We have 3.5 million pages of evidence she said existed for over a decade. And the names that are coming out are nothing compared to the names still being hidden. So if you believe survivors deserve more than buried files and blurred faces, hit that like button right now. It is free, and it tells the YouTube algorithm to keep this video alive. Comment below. What name do you think the DOJ is still protecting? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.
and subscribe, because I'm covering this story until every single name is out, and not 1 minute sooner. I'll see you in the next one.